Alright, in this video I want to talk about Daniel and Revelation and how prophecy is being fulfilled, and start with this video over here from YouTube user Ty Green. I generally like his videos. I think there's a couple of things that I've heard from him that I don't agree on concerning doctrine, but I do check out his videos. And he has one here where he talks about BRICS. He talks about BRICS actually more often than a lot of people that I listen to. And if you don't know what BRICS is, it's an organization of countries where they're trying to break free from the dollar, where they don't have to use the dollar to exchange for oil. They're going to use their own currency. And this is dangerous for America. Not that it's wrong for them to do this or evil for them to do this, but it's wrong for America because America is dependent on their dollar, and their dollar being backed by oil and being used as the only exchange for oil. So if you want to buy oil from any nation, you have to exchange your money for US dollars, and then use those US dollars to go get the oil. So that benefits America. Kind of like when you go to something like a Peter Piper or a Chuck E. Cheese, one of those places where you need to exchange your real money for their fake money in order to use their games. And even if you don't use all that money, now you're stuck with that money that can only be used there. And that's kind of what America has done. It set up a worldwide Chuck E. Cheese where everybody wants to play with the oil, but in order to get it, you have to buy their tokens. And it's only good for the oil. You can't use it really much for anything else. For these other nations anyway. It's not as valuable to them as it is to America. Just like those coins are valuable to Chuck E. Cheese or Peter Piper or whatever. But anyway, just a quick analogy, not a perfect one, but just as to help you understand what's going on worldwide and why America benefits from this. Because they end up getting value from other countries because their currency actually has some value, or they end up exchanging goods that their country has for US dollars, which is basically like you using real money, which you think is real money, to get Chuck E. Cheese tokens, or giving them real goods, like you do labor for them, you sell food or other products that you make to Chuck E. Cheese to get their coins, when their coins ultimately have no real value other than to play games at their store. So these countries want to break away from that because it is a BS system, right? You can't blame them. They're not necessarily doing anything evil. They just want to have their own system. And, I know Americans would think of it as evil because it's going to affect America and ruin America's way of life. So now it's going to be evil, and you got to be patriotic and fight against this, when these people are doing nothing wrong or evil. Really, they just want to be free, and free from America, and free from having to use our currency. Right? That's not evil. Right? There might be other things about these nations, what they're doing, that may be evil. I'm not saying these are perfect and wonderful countries and with wonderful leaders and wonderful laws and all that. That's not what I'm saying, so don't twist that. What I'm saying is just that in itself is not evil. Wanting to use your own currency or a different currency to exchange for oil. What's wrong with that? But anyway, what's interesting is that Ty Green was saying, I think this is the beast that rises up out of the sea. It hasn't risen up as of yet, but it's rising up. And I believe he says, number 11 here, Indonesia has joined in to make 10 members for BRICS. And so it got my attention. I was like, okay, is this that beast that's going to end up rising up out of the sea? And then, things popped up into my head. Because I was like, well, wait a second here. In Daniel chapter 2, what I have right here, it mentions a statue with a head of gold, which represents Babylon, but then it's going to be replaced by the chest and arms of silver, which represents the Medo-Persian Empire. Then it's going to be replaced by Greece as the belly and thighs of brass. And then it has legs of iron, which represents Rome then taking over. Excuse me. But then it says that it has feet of iron and clay. So you know the iron is there. It's still Roman, right? But it's also mixed with clay. Miry clay, though, so that it's dirty. And I believe it also mentions it's baked, so it's hardened. You can't reshape it. So not only is it full of filth, it's hardened and baked, so it's kind of useless, especially since it's brittle and you're trying to use it to hold up an iron statue. All right? And I was thinking about that, and I was like, yeah, no, I always think of Rome, but when I think of Rome, what do I think of? Well, being from the West, I think of Rome, Italy, the Vatican, the papacy. But then I was realizing, yeah, well, there's 2 legs here, there's 2 feet, and Rome split up into 2. It split up into the East and Western empires, the Eastern Orthodox and the Western Roman Catholic. And I was thinking about this, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense. And I started to see what was going on. As it says here in verse 44, just to let you know that there's 10 kings, as we see here, with these feet of iron and clay being the last kingdom, yet it says in the days of these kings, multiple, will God set up his kingdom. So that's when he's going to come back, as in the dream here, the statue is destroyed by this stone cut without hands, comes in, hits the statue at the feet, so at the end, when it's become the iron and clay, does Jesus return, that the rock, the foundation of the Christian church, comes and destroys this whole statue, and then God establishes his kingdom, which will be an everlasting kingdom, right? And I just wanted to bring this part up here. So I was thinking about that. I am going to use the Paint app to try to demonstrate some stuff. I'm going to bring this over to chapter 7. I don't know if I'm going to talk about chapter 7 of Daniel right this moment, but I think I'm going to, so I'm going to bring it over here for right now. So when he was saying this, I was like, yeah, that makes sense, because Russia is basically Orthodox. So they're still part of that Roman Empire, right? Just like a good chunk of Europe is basically Roman based with its law. Even the United States went from common law to Roman law. The law that we have now is Roman law. And a lot of people don't know this, don't understand this, so when I say this, they're just kind of like, huh, whatever. But it's something you're going to have to look into if you really want to know this. So we can tell through our government structure being a republic, and with the architecture being Roman and Greek, it's Roman. America, Europe, I guess you could say even Australia to an extent there, and other places like that. So it's all tied into that. But it's partly weak, partly strong, because it's got that Roman element where it's iron, but it doesn't have the full force of the Roman Empire. It's partly weak, so it can't stand with its full power and might that it used to have. So what I was seeing going on here was, we have Rome here, and this is what I want to illustrate, and it splits, and my hands are kind of representing, I guess, the feet with the 10 toes, right? But it seems as though the kings come up from the east, like it mentions in Revelation about the Euphrates drying up, making way for the kings of the east. And that may be that this BRICS thing going on is a depiction of that. And they are that beast with 10 horns, which I'll talk more about. And it comes up out of the sea, which I thought was interesting, because I've been watching videos where people are saying that these drones on the East Coast are actually coming out of Chinese submarines, that these are new Chinese technology, or at least new to us and to our knowledge, and are just now being used, where they're different types of drones with different technology, kind of like what you think of for a UFO, a flying saucer, in the way that they're able to move around and to be able to drop basically nuclear weapons or other type weapons, EMPs or napalm, whatever they felt like dropping, right? they could do that through these drones, which are a lot harder to detect and take out than conventional aircraft and jets and what have you. So I was thinking, yeah, see, the beast is rising up out of the sea, where Iran, which is in this group here, as you can see, number 8 over here, they have a very advanced, what is it called, drone technology, and they probably worked with China, where they got secrets from America on how to develop some of these aircraft, which they probably put together to build these things. So you see this beast is coming up out of the sea, and the sea also represents, a multitude of people and nations and tongues. So we see that this beast is rising up. But then there's something interesting that is said in the scriptures, because there's this, from the east it looks like that's where we see this beast come up out of the sea, but then there is this entity, this being, this person known as the beast, and these 10 kings give their authority over to this beast. So you have these 10 kings, and then you have this other fella, which I believe rises up out of the west. And we see this as history repeats itself, right? You can learn from history what's going to happen in the future, where Rome split, and you had the Eastern Empire, which believed that they had all the bishops had the same authority. There wasn't a bishop of bishops. But then in the West, they had the bishop of bishops, the Roman Pope, who is a head over all the bishops, right? So you can see that the same thing is going to go on. In the East, they're going to have an oligarchy of kings, but in the West, there's going to rise up one king. And the ones from the East are going to eventually give their power over to the one from the West to unite the world, right? And we're starting to see how this is all coming along. Now, all this may seem like some gobbledygook, weird nonsense, but when it starts to actually unfold, well, then you'll see that, hey, there's something to this, right? As of right now, I understand that it's a speculation and imagination, just trying to put these things together, but I want to share with you some scriptures here. Over here in Revelation chapter 12, at verse 3, this is the first mention in Revelation of this beast. It says, "And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns, and the 7 crowns upon his heads." So, there's a key point here. We have a red dragon, right? And it has 7 heads, 10 horns, 7 crowns. So, each one of these horns doesn't have a crown, right? It seems like there's a crown per head. And it's a red dragon, right? It's told to you that it's a dragon. Well, in Revelation 13 it says, "And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns." So now there's 10 crowns, not 7. And this time it lets you know that the crowns are on the horns. Because I believe the horns represent physical people, such as leaders of nations. But the heads, I believe, I know a lot of people think of them as the continents. I think they're spiritual heads. They're spiritual beings. Like Gabriel wrestling with the prince of Egypt. The angel Gabriel, when he was coming to answer Daniel's prayer, was not fighting with the physical man that ruled Persia, but a fallen angel that was king or prince of Persia. And it says that these horns had 10 crowns upon his head, and the name of blasphemy. Now, what's interesting is that it doesn't say that this beast here, it's changed. It's not a dragon. As it says, the beast that I saw was like unto a leopard. So the main body of it is like unto a leopard. Some people say, well, that could be like a tiger, something that's like that, a jaguar or something, I guess. I was like, okay, but we're going to just go with leopard because that's what's there. So it's yellow with black spots, white belly. A lot of people take this as a mixture of the different races. And as you can see with BRICS, you have Russia, China, South Africa, Iran, Ethiopia, you got a mixture right there of white people, yellow people, black people, and in between as well, right? So that fits there with the body here being a leopard. And his feet were as the feet of a bear. And a lot of people refer to Russia as this bear. And you use your feet, your hands, or an animal, the paws, to move around and to do your whatever you're going to do. Right now, Russia is the one doing the fighting, right? On the ground, getting their paws dirty, right? So it makes a little bit of sense, right? And then it says, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. Now, excuse me, this is interesting because there's people who like to say that the lion is England, and it makes sense here because it says their mouth was the mouth of a lion. And you can listen to these nations and they will have, even their leaders like Putin will speak English, the language of the lion, right? So it's interesting that they would do that. They would have the mouth of a lion, all speaking English, which is interesting. But then a lot of people say that the mouth of the lion actually represents Iran. Their animal that depicts their nation is a lion, and that very well could be it. But I don't know if I would say Iran is the mouthpiece for this beast, or that the people speak Iranian. I'm not sure the language they actually speak there. I'm assuming that's what it's called. And then it says, and the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. So you notice that this beast is not a red dragon. It's a mixture of a leopard, a lion, and a bear. And it still has 7 heads. It has 10 horns, but now it has 10 crowns on the horns, not just saying it has 7 crowns. And it says the dragon gave this beast the power and his seat and great authority. So it's like a different entity from the being in heaven. And I believe the being in heaven, that dragon, which we're told in Revelation 12 represents Satan, who is that serpent, the dragon. It even tells you, I believe, at verse 9. Verse 9 here, where it says, and the dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. So we see here, this beast seems like a physical manifestation of this spiritual beast that was in the heavens, that was cast down. And even though it says it has 10 crowns upon these horns, which would lead you to believe that there's 10 kings, it says the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. So it refers to these multitudes, and then it says a singular person, a him, his, right? And that becomes clearer when we also read in Revelation chapter 17, where at verse 8 it says, the beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition. Now, I believe this can be taken in a lot of different ways, because we read in Revelation 12 that dragon was cast down. How far down? Well, we know that the angels are referred to as stars in Revelation chapter 1. And the devil is cast down, and he brings 1/3 of the stars with him, so 1/3 of the angels with him. Are they cast down all the way to the bottomless pit, and then he comes up out of it? And as he's coming up out of it, he comes up out of the sea, and then this physical manifestation of that actually takes form. This beast that's a mixture of the leopard, bear, and lion, where it's a combination of the nations that are coming together as BRICS. Maybe. But we also know that it's an individual, where ultimately this all comes together, personified into one person. And we'll see that a bit here as it goes on to say, "And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was and is not and yet is." It's kind of interesting because it was, and then John is saying at his time it's not, yet it is. So it's like, what's going on there, right? There's a lot to think about there. And a lot of people speculate because he says that this beast goes into perdition, that this is in reference to what John talked about in the Gospel of John about Judas being the son of perdition. Some people believe he raises up, and that Judas, who was filled with the spirit of Satan when he betrayed Jesus, comes again and betrays all of Israel as the man of sin, the beast, the Antichrist. And it makes some sense. That very well could be what's going on. But it could just mean in the same way that Judas was filled with the Spirit, that this guy is going to be in that same position. History just repeats itself, right? There's nothing new under the sun. You want to know what's going to happen in the future, you got to study the past. And the scriptures, obviously. It goes on to say at verse 9, "And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains." Now, that doesn't help you too much now, does it? 7 mountains. Well, you know that 7 mountains could be 7 literal mountains. Some people say it's the 7 continents. Can be. Some people say that it's kingdoms, because mountains represent kingdoms, as the rock or the stone that's cut without hands that hits the statue turns into a great mountain, or also known as a kingdom, that encompasses the whole earth, right? So when it says the 7 mountains, you got to think about that a little bit, right? And it says that this woman sits upon this mountain, because this chapter is not just talking about the beast, it's talking about the woman sitting upon the beast. Excuse me. And I believe the woman might be a representation of Israel, but we'll go through that as we go through that here. And it says here at verse 10, "And there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, and one is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space." So, there's a lot to say there. But you notice that when it talks about the 7 heads, it says they're 7 mountains, but then it says that there are also 7 kings. But it says it had 10 horns with 10 crowns, right? So that would be 10 kings. So why is it talking about 7 kings? I believe this is talking about spiritual kings. Like I was saying, the Prince of Persia is an angel that directs the actual physical prince or king of Persia. And it's kind of like you have in the book of Daniel, Michael is the prince of Israel. So he's an angel that stands up for Israel. And a lot of people take this as the 5 that are fallen and one is. Well, the one that is, when John is writing here, would be the Roman Empire, right? So you got that Roman Empire. And what were before that? Well, before Rome, you would have 5, right? And this has to do, obviously, with its connection to Israel and the statue in Daniel, chapter 2 there. So before the iron, you had Greece, which is 1. They were fallen. Before that, you had the Medo-Persian Empire. They're fallen. That's 2. Before them, you had Babylon. So that's 3. What about before them? Well, you had Assyria. And before them, you had Egypt. So you had those spiritual kings fell. You had the one behind Rome standing, which is the one that is. And then there's one that has not yet come afterwards, which I believe is what everything has split, which we already are seeing right now. We have whoever's ruling this mess now, spiritually speaking. And where was I here? Verse 10 here. If one is, and the other is not yet come, and when he cometh he must continue a short space. And this might be one that is not quite here as of yet. It's forming. It's going to be this world kingdom that's forming. As it goes on to say at verse 11 here, and the beast that was and is not, even he is the eighth, and is of the seven, and goeth into, again he mentions perdition, which is another word for destruction or corruption. So, there's 7 of them. They're fallen. One of them, of those 7, comes back. Alright? So one of the spiritual heads comes back. And it would be one that would have a deadly wound. And when you look at these kingdoms, which one actually received a deadly wound? One that I think of is Egypt received a deadly wound, where the Pharaoh died in the Red Sea. Right? So maybe that has something to do with that, the spirit of Egypt. I've done a video in the past talking about Egypt rising, if you want to go check out that video. I think it's from a couple years ago. And some other ones with Egypt. You just go to my channel on YouTube. I don't know if you can search the same way on BitChute and Rumble. Go to my channel and just type in Egypt. There should be a few videos on that. At least 2 or 3 of them anyway. But anyway, then it goes on to say, the point I wanted to make with this whole thing here, and the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet. See, this beast that he's talking about isn't quite fully formed yet, because the 10 horns, they're not there yet. But maybe we see them forming through BRICS. As it says, but receive power as kings for 1 hour with the beast. So you see here that there's this personification of the beast, because it says at verse 13, the number of rebellion there, these have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. So, like I was saying, I believe in the West, Europe and North America there's going to be one that rises up, kind of like Hitler in the Fourth Reich, which I believe is DJT there, or DJT there, Donald J. Trump there. He is that guy, and he is that personification of the beast. He is a cold-hearted liar. He is a personification of Satan's mindset, where he doesn't care about the truth and just casts it to the ground, and he is so haughty and arrogant that he would claim to be God. As a matter of fact, he loves the tweets where people refer to him as God. People just think it's normal that his arrogance is like that. They don't even think anything of it. So if he were to claim that he was God, people would just like, oh, that's Donald being Donald. They wouldn't think anything of it. That's the point it's gotten to. I believe he is the Judas, the son of perdition, that Satan will enter. And then those 10 kings, BRICS, will give their power over to him. Just like it says at the first seal, when that Antichrist there receives a crown, he goes forth conquering with a bow, which is a reference to actually having covenants or contracts. And Donald likes making those deals. He made a book about the art of the deal. He's going to make these deals, and these kings are going to give their power and authority over to him. And when this all is going down, that's when eventually we see here that the beast, at verse 16, it says, and the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make war with her, or shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. And it says that God has put that in their hearts to do that, right? And it goes on to say, and God hath put it in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree and to give their kingdom unto the beast, and until the words of God shall be fulfilled. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. This is not what's going on yet, but Israel, or Jerusalem, will be reigning over the kings of the earth soon. I predicted that it's going to be the headquarters of the New World Order, where I believe Trump, not only did he move the embassy there, he's going to move the headquarters of the UN or NATO and all that over there as well. And that's going to be the headquarters of this New World Order. It's going to be part of this deal to allow Israel to have the third temple. But you can see BRICS, they're already against Israel. You look at these nations, Russia, Iran, Egypt, United Arab Emirates, they don't have any ill intentions towards Israel, do they? Not to mention that these other ones probably could care less about Israel. They're not you couldn't say they're necessarily for them, against them. They're probably more against them than for them. So you can see that these 10 kings would end up coming after Israel, because Israel, once World War III goes on and everything starts to clap and everything's reestablished and this new kingdom comes up, Israel's going to be that whore that rides on this beast. But not for long, where eventually they turn on her, making this deal with the beast, and they end up destroying her. But, the remnant will escape to Petra. And of course, Petra is the rock, Jesus, not Peter. Peter is Petros, that is built upon the Petra, like the rest of us. We're all Petroses, built upon the Petra, Jesus Christ, if we're Christians, that is, true Christians. So you see here, I hope I've explained this well enough. So now coming over here to Daniel chapter 7, we'll take a look at this here to see if we see something similar. Because we read here in Daniel chapter 7 another vision, where Daniel chapter 2, Nebuchadnezzar had a vision of that statue. The head of gold, chest and arms of silver, belly and thighs of brass, legs of iron, feet of iron and clay. Well, here in Daniel chapter 7, it's something a little different. Daniel has a dream, and he has a dream of a beast, but there's something interesting to take a note here. It says, in the first year of Belteshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream. And it talks about the 4 winds of heaven strove upon the sea. We read about those 4 winds in Revelation chapter 7. And then it says, and 4 great beasts came up out of the sea, that diverse one from another. So these appear to come up after Babylon. So what comes up after Babylon? Well, the first was like a lion. Well, a lot of people take this to be Babylon. Makes sense. But we're going to look at it just a little bit differently here. Persia, Iran, they only recently, in the 19th century, I believe, changed their name from Iran or the 20th century, to Iran. Their former name was Persia. And they use a lion to depict themselves. Right? And we're going to go to the next beast here at verse 5, and it says, and behold, another beast like to a bear. Now, if we apply this to who took over Persia, that would be Greece, right? This bear, and it rises up on one side. I don't know how that would depict to Greece, and it devours much flesh. A lot of people like to put this to be Russia, or Russia's rising up right now and devouring much flesh. And makes a little bit of sense there, but in the context of who rises up after Persia, it would be Greece. And then the third one here, it says is like a leopard. That would mean Rome is like a leopard, which makes a little bit of sense because Rome was a mixture of the European nations, and then it took over and went south and eastward. And that would make sense that it's a mixture of those colors, yellow, black, and white there for a leopard. And it has 4 wings, and it has 4 heads. And you may be saying, well, how does the 4 heads come into play here? Well, that makes me think of the Third Reichs. We have 3 of them already. Hitler was the 3rd one, so we have 1 more coming up, right? The 4th one. So that might be America being reborn there as this fascist state that it's about to come into. And Then we have at verse 7, and then behold, a fourth beast, very terrible, came up, right? It has iron teeth, so it's kind of Roman, right? But it's probably Eastern Roman. And it has 10 horns. And I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots, and behold, in this horn were great eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. Sounds similar to Trump in the fact that it speaks great things, but he hasn't ripped up 3 kings, but perhaps he's about to. Of BRICS here, because he was talking about joining BRICS. Very strange, right? But you see that this beast, it's not connected to these other beasts yet. In Revelation 13, you read about how this beast has 7 heads. Well, right here, if you combine all the beasts, the lion, the bear, the 4 heads of the leopard, and then the head of this 4th beast, which it doesn't say what kind of an animal it is. Maybe some kind of dragon of some sort. You have 7 heads. Right? So you add all these ones up, you get the beast from Revelation 13. So these kingdoms rise up, and then eventually they come together. So this last one here is kind of interesting, right? It looks like it could be connected to this whole BRICS thing, having the 10 horns. But this video is more just something to think about. You know, some thoughts that were inspired by watching this video from Ty Green and trying to think about what's to come. And I was trying to apply, let's say he's right, BRICS is that beast. So I was like, okay, let's go with that. Let's see what comes of it. And while thinking about it, this is what came of it. And I just wanted to share it with you. If it makes sense, share with me how it makes sense, and if you see things that agree with it and would like to add to this, comment or make your own video sharing it with me, or if you think that this is wrong and you see some holes in this argument, how this can't be for whatever reason, share that with me as well, because I'm not dogmatic about this. This is just something to think about, speculate on, trying to put together something that isn't here yet. Right? We know something is coming. We're not quite sure the details of what it's going to look like. We're just trying to connect what we see from the scriptures to what we're seeing, to see if it can apply to what's going on around us, to see if we're in that time, because we're told to watch. So let's give Ty Green a like on this one. And yeah, that is that. Thanks for watching, and take care. Oh, and thank you for your support in any way you're supporting. Thank you for your prayers. Please pray, like, subscribe, share, comment, and if you can financially support, there should be links in the description to ways to help, if you feel like helping. So I can keep this ministry going, hopefully at least long enough until Jesus comes back. But with all that being said, thanks again for watching, and take care.